This is Only the Strong Survive, a podcast powered by Kahn Media, where we dive deep into the world of business, leadership, and innovation. I'm your host, Dan Kahn, and I'm honored to have you join us today. So let's get ready to learn some survival skills together. Hey everyone, welcome back to Only the Strong Survive. I'm your host, Dan Kahn, and today's guest is Mark Neifeld. Mark is President, CEO, and Commissioner of the Sport Fishing Championship. In 2021, he founded SFC with the goal to build a world-class saltwater competition that brings people together and gives anglers a bigger platform to grow their brands and businesses. Before launching SFC, Mark built his career in major sports and live events, holding executive roles with organizations like the Dallas Cowboys and the Texas Rangers. Along the way, he helped create and scale touring sports events that traveled to major stadiums across the country and has an incredible amount of broadcast and entertainment experience that we thought you all really like to hear about. Mark, thanks for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
Dan, thank you so much for having me on the show. And after hearing all the job titles, I mean, do I need another job title or?
Yeah. Well, you and I met a few weeks ago and we were on a call talking about something else. And you were making all these kind of casual references to all this stuff that you've learned in terms of pushing live social content out to big audiences. And I texted my team after that call and I said, this guy, Mark, has a more thorough working understanding of modern social media marketing of live events than anyone I've ever spoken to. So I really want to have him on the show. So,
wow, I'm very honored that you would say something like that. Thank you, Dan.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because what we do for a living, most of the executives we talk to don't have a fully holistic understanding of how social works, of how kind of content marketing works. So it's cool to talk to somebody who comes from the big leagues and really gets it, and hoping we'll learn from you a little bit today and hear your story. So let's kind of start at the beginning. I think you grew up in Florida and we're probably doing some fishing there. How did that come about and how was that part of your life?
Yeah. Well, I was originally born in Philadelphia, but yeah, I spent most of my childhood in Sarasota, Bradenton, Florida. And, just like any Florida kid, I either found myself on a golf course or on the back of the boat or, on the beach. And just really grew up with the salt water in my veins and loved the coastal lifestyle. Attended Florida State University, and after FSU, came back to the Tampa area and worked for the Tampa Bay Lightning. So, just being brought up around it, and I like to joke around. Like my senior year of high school, I think I was out fishing more than I was in class. But it's just something that it's a part of your DNA when you grow up down there. Is just it's memories that you never forget.
That sounds like a pretty cool way to grow up. That sounds pretty good. When you were in college and then after college, did you know you wanted to work in professional sports as a career, or is that something?
Yeah,
how did that come about?
Did. Yeah, going back, I attended the 2002, I want to say, the Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals. Tampa Bay Lightning beat the Calgary Flames 2-1 in Game 7, and I was in high school at the time, and I just remember when the Lightning won and, the team took the ice and they're holding the cup, there were a bunch of guys coming out of off the bench that were in suits, and they were also throwing on hats, and I looked over at my brother-in-law. I said, I want to be one of those guys, that comes off the bench, that works in the front office, that, is out there, working in sports. And so I always kind of had my mind made up, when I went to college. Everything that I did was, building around being in sports business, being in the front office of a team or a league. It's just something that I'm crazy passionate about. The best part about SFC is just really curating what the future of professional fishing and saltwater fishing is going to look like. But yeah, I've always wanted to do this. I came from a family that my father is a doctor. My mom is now in administration. She's a nurse. All my sisters are in the medical different medical fields. And so I was the kid that, was like, nah, I'm going to go work in sports. And I haven't worked a day in my life. I always tell people that. I mean, if you enjoy what you're doing, you're not going to work a day in your life. It's hard, but still, I enjoy it.
Well, that's pretty cool. So you kind of set your sights on, now, was it just sports? Was it football? Was it fishing? Like, what was the original goal?
In the beginning, I wanted to work in the NFL. I grew up in Tampa. Anybody that knows me, I'm a diehard Tampa Bay Buccaneer fan. We're also Green Bay Packers season ticket holders. My wife and I. My wife's the Packer.
You're a cheesehead, huh? So like,
Yeah, we got a family full of cheeseheads.
are you going up to like Lambeau and all that? Like, those
Oh
guys
yeah,
are
we're season ticket
they're
holders.
hardcore, man. You're sitting out there in the
We're
snow.
hardcore, man. You should have seen us on Saturday night during the playoff game that unfortunately didn't go the Packers' way. But yeah, I mean, we were in a big, crowded, cheesehead sports bar here in Dallas, cheering them on. My wife, she's a crazy cheesehead. Her whole family is.
That's awesome.
So, I wanted to work in the NFL. And honestly, when I was coming out of college, I had a couple of opportunities to intern and entry level jobs in like minor league baseball and different places. And then, I was really fortunate that I had applied for an opportunity with the Tampa Bay Lightning. It was a childhood dream. I grew up cheering for the Lightning and going to games. And, honestly, as soon as I turned 16, I was in the car driving 45 minutes to go to Lightning games. I got a call to interview for an opportunity with the Tampa Bay Lightning in corporate communications and ad marketing and PR. And at the time, date myself a little bit, but, social media marketing, it wasn't a thing. I went in there and part of my, early role with the Lightning was and I kind of took it upon myself to do it, but audit all of the, big four professional sports leagues and see what each team was doing on social media. So we could then take it back and build a strategy with what the Tampa Bay Lightning, and at the time it was called the St. Pete Times Forum, what those channels could look like. But it was so early on. I mean, I had a degree in communications, public relations from Florida State. I like to tell people like major companies like Walmart weren't on social media yet. And so we started, really early on in my career, I was given opportunities to just kind of, go out there and create and see what works and what doesn't work. And, I'll never forget, going to our sales team and saying, hey, I think that we can, find a local company to sponsor content for our Facebook posts. And you got to remember, like back in the day, I mean, that was like unheard of.
That was very unusual.
It was like, they looked at me like I had three heads, and now, here we are 2025, and that's like your, primary, form of communication and sponsor activation is through, media and digital media. So it's just funny, how far, we've come in, a short amount of time. And look, the media landscape is continuing to change every single day. But anyway, to answer your question, yeah, I always wanted to work in sports. I'm passionate about, everything, every place that I've been, whether it's baseball or the NFL. Just super fortunate to be able to be working in professional fishing now.
So you're working at Lightning, and then, I mean, you're sitting in Texas right now, and that's where I think SFC is based, right? So yep. What brought you to Texas? Was it a job? Like, how did that work?
Yeah. So when I worked for the Georgia Dome, the old home stadium for the Atlanta Falcons. And during that time, in 2011, I became the project manager, the event manager for the Georgia Dome for the 2013 75th anniversary of the NCAA Final Four. That event took over the entire Georgia World Congress Center campus, which includes the convention center, the fourth largest convention center in the country, every space, in the convention center, Phillips Arena, the venue where the Hawks still play, and Centennial Olympic Park, which is a 33-acre park in the heart of Atlanta. And so I was vice president of operations for the Atlanta Local Organizing Committee for that event. Chair of operations for the local organizing committee, and then served as the competition venue event manager for the Georgia Dome, where we play the games. And so right after that, the college football playoff, was announced, or it might have been announced in 2013. And I was, brought out by the Dallas Cowboys to run in the same capacity, chair of operations for the SCOC, the Stadium Events Organizing Committee, and event manager for AT&T Stadium for the inaugural college football playoff national championship. Wow. So I came out to do that. Had the opportunity just to work with the Dallas Cowboys organization. They're a phenomenal organization. If you want to be an entrepreneur working for the Jones family, it doesn't get any better than that. That's kind of what, got me into, that brought me out to Dallas. And then,
was there a contrast going from, I mean, not that the Lightning is not a great pro level team or anything, but all of a sudden you're working with the Jones family and the Cowboys. And I mean, that's, I think most would consider sort of the highest echelon of professional sports. What Was there like a cultural shift? Was there like, what was the vibe in that office? What was that like?
Well, funny enough, a lot of people that work and still work for the Dallas Cowboys came from the Tampa Bay Lightning. There are a
Interesting.
couple guys,
Okay.
yeah, that are still there, VPs and executive VPs, they're still there. And this is back in 2014, so they were all a little bit younger back then. But no, I was with the Tampa Bay Lightning when Jeff Finnick bought the team. I was there during the transition period, and Jeff ran a world class organization. He just came in, and culturally, I'll never forget. I was a coordinator. I mean, I might have been full time for less than 6 months, and to get a handwritten card, and a bottle of champagne from the new owner, he really like ran a top notch organization. I was around great people at the Georgia Dome, people that have worked on Super Bowls and Final Fours and the SEC basketball and football championships. And, if they weren't at the Georgia Dome, there were people that were out working, other major events all over the country, kind of the pioneers too. I mean, if you think back, a lot of these people worked on the 96 Olympic Games. And that was really kind of a turning point for, major event project management planning, as a whole. And so you were with, these incredible people that, built the 96 Olympic Games and ran it. And I was just fortunate to be, a decade down the line or a little more than that, getting the opportunity to run the NCAA Final Four. But yeah, I mean, you go to the Cowboys. I mean, I'll say this, being a Georgia Dome employee, I was a state employee. So with being a state employee, now the Georgia Dome had its own budgets, but like it's still a bureaucracy, there's a lot of red tape. The Dallas Cowboys, the Jones family, the culture that they have over there is unbelievable. I mean, first of all, day one welcoming, and to have access, I tell people all the time, like I was ready to go be an entrepreneur full time in 2014. I've always been an entrepreneur my entire life. When I was at the Georgia Dome, I owned a company and I was moonlighting and doing project management for Turner,
Oh, wow.
So, but when that phone rings and it's the Dallas Cowboys, and to go work for the Dallas Cowboys, the ultimate sports entrepreneur, that was just a dream come true. And to run the inaugural CFP, yeah, it was amazing. We did the 50th Academy of Country Music Awards a couple of months after that. Every major touring artist rolls through AT&T Stadium. Obviously, you've got your Dallas Cowboys home games and college football games, and it was a great opportunity. But yeah, culturally, I mean, it is just a phenomenal organization. Like they are just top down. What Mr. Jones and the family does. I mean, wear that star and go to work every day. It means a lot. When it's right here. So
yeah,
like physically.
When you're working for the Georgia Dome or for the Cowboys at the stadium, how much of that job is sports and how much of that job is like logistics and just figuring out like moving people around and all that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think one of the ways to answer that is like when I talk to young people that are going to school and they say, Mark, I'm thinking about studying sports management. I would say that's great, study sports management, but get a degree in something else as well, dual degree, because there's no such thing as sports managers, right? Like what do you do? Well, you're either in marketing or you're in sales, you're in accounting, you're an attorney, you're whatever it is. And those are all, business segments of a professional sports team or a league. And so, I think that there's a lot of good to come out of like those programs, but going back to, the question, every job, every venue is very unique. AT&T Stadium operates in many ways like an arena. It's a domed 70,000 plus fixed seat stadium with a rigging grid, a removable turf that has concrete underneath. It runs a 365 day a year tour program, 365 days a year of special events. And so my job, overseeing event services for the Cowboys, was to just make sure that all of the different business units, whether it be the tour program or private events or major events, like they were all cohabitating so we could maximize revenue for the venue. And so, I mean, our sales team, they're phenomenal. If we're, you could pull into AT&T Stadium one day and you've got a Cadillac ride and drive, out in one of the parking lots, and you walk in, the tour program's running. We got private events in one of the clubs, and you're loading in for, Taylor Swift, so there's just a lot, going on. And, in order to be able to operate, and execute, that venue to its potential, it just takes a lot of coordination. So I think, a lot of it's project management. like talking about SFC, I had my senior leadership team on a call today, and I was telling them about this. 10 years, being in event management, you're really in project management.
Mm-hmm.
And so now SFC 5 years down the road, I would say like we pretty much have it figured out how to run a international tour across North America. It's no small undertaking. It's a really big thing. I mean, we produce 16 events, all across the continent, moving boats and cameras and sponsor activations and all those things. But we've gotten really good at it over 5 years. The next 5 years, we have pretty ambitious goals, and so in order to be able to do that, a lot of those project management skills that I developed are really helpful. So we basically execute, where we want to be by 2030.
So let's talk about the SFC. So you're working for the Cowboys, you're working on college championships. Is this like a thing that's sort of like percolating in your mind? Is this like, how do you pivot from running this massive stadium into deciding you're going to launch like a new pro fishing?
And I had never worked in fishing.
Right. Yeah. How does that? And also you're in Texas, which unless you're down in the Gulf area, there's not.
Texas. In fact, 3 of our 4 champions.
I'm not knocking Texas. I love Texas. I'm just saying there's not a lot of ocean in Dallas. That's all I'm saying. So how does that all happen?
Yeah. So, in between, I was a vice president for the Texas Rangers, primarily on the new ballpark project, trying to bring 365 model over to Globe Life Field. We were still in the design, phase of Globe Life Field. After that, I worked with Teal Capital and Ben Sutton, and Ben is a really, influential person in my career. I always tell people like most of the public, really knows Jerry Jones, but Ben Sutton was the architect of, really modern day collegiate athletics and what that media model looks like. He's kind of the grandfather of the multimedia rights model. And so, working with Ben for over 3 years, I had a company in college sports. We were executing a roll-up for venues, similar to, my past experience, producing events and monetizing stadiums. But, I had an opportunity to work with all the people over at Teal Capital and Ben and all the people that he had worked with for over 20 years and, just be a sponge. I'm young. I was younger back then, but just really be a sponge. And, you have opportunities to like get access or have access to someone that like really wants to mentor you and will tell you, how they built a business, from I believe it was 1991. It was 91 to 2015 and sold the company for, I believe it was $2.4 billion. So anyway, when you have, a mentor like that, what happened with me was I was happy running, the business and college athletics. We had a nice little company that we had built. Revenue went to zero during COVID. Was fortunate to, be able to get out of the business and put it in the Teal Capital Revel XP portfolio. And
so you sold it?
I sold the business. Yeah. To Teal.
What was the business that you sold?
A company called Complex SC, and so we were running complex sports complexes.
Okay.
So we would go to the colleges and say, we want the exclusive non-game day rights for your football stadium, basketball arena, soccer, softball, golf, and that we'll monetize it through tour programs, private events. And we had developed a portfolio of touring stadium events that fit well in small and medium-sized markets, i.e. college towns. So we created a obstacle course racing event called Stadium Blitz. Monster Hydro Stadium Blitz, and Rob Gronkowski was our business partner, and he was the face. And so we were going to Arizona State, and we were going to Florida State, and we were bringing Dalvin Cook out, and we were getting the student population to come.
Was that a separate business, or was that part of the stadium management business?
It was all the same. Yeah. So we had.
You tell these colleges, we'll come in and help run your stadium on non-game days. We're going to help monetize it, and part of what you're bringing in are the events you've already created.
Correct. Yeah.
That's pretty smart. Okay.
Yeah. So we would go get the non-game day rights, and then we would, we had a portfolio that we could kind of control and run through our own venues. We owned Topgolf Live. So at a period of time, we had the exclusive rights to Topgolf's technology in a stadium setting. worldwide. So we had built Topgolf Live, and we would turn Doak Campbell Stadium or Papa John's Stadium in Louisville, into a driving range for anywhere from like 4 to 11 days. So that business was running, and then COVID. So
being in the event business in 2020 was rough.
Yeah, imagine building a business for like 3.5 years. Bringing people together on college campuses was kind of our thing. Not a good business to be in during a global pandemic.
So were you already shopping it when before COVID happened, or?
No, not really. We kind of had a arrangement that we knew where we were going to go, to consolidate the portfolio of businesses. Everybody over at Teal and Ben and all those guys, we were all kind of always on the same page of what that timeline would look like before a consolidation. COVID just simply expedited it. It just moved. I think anybody was planning for that in March of 2020.
But you were able to find a buyer during COVID to basically who had enough vision to say, okay, I know short-term things are shitty, but excuse my language, but we know that things will open back up and we want an event business.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think for me, honestly, the opportunity, somebody called me a wild horse a couple of years ago. That's just the way I operate. I move fast. I say I'm a fighter jet, I fly around, I blow shit up. So being on a college campus with the amount of bureaucracy and red tape that you have to go through, you could come with an amazing idea and business plan and have it backed, and it's still going to take 12 months before you get it passed through, the board of regents for the school, and in some cases it's got to go to state, and it was brutal to be able to scale that business. Keep in mind, this is pre-NIL. So the college landscape has changed a lot with the athletic departments. Some of them are, private now, and now you've got all these different collectives, and every school's doing a little bit differently. But back, in 2017, it was still red tape city. Mm-hmm. So I saw it as an opportunity to exit the business, and then, that was around July of 2020, and then. I remember in December of 2020, I came across a statistic. I started combing sports and entertainment, looking, to see if there was a big roll-up opportunity. And I came across a statistic that said more Americans fish than play golf and tennis combined. And that just got me down the path of where we are today.
Interesting. So you sold that business, you see the stat, and you think there's a opportunity here.
Yep. Yeah. So, the story is, went on vacation. I had a 9-hour drive out to Colorado. Keep in mind, it's still COVID. So it was remember the waves, up, open and closing? You didn't know you were on vacation.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it still feels like it was yesterday.
Sure. So this
I
is
had a
during
9.5-hour
2020?
drive. Yeah. December 2020, right at the end of the year, right before New Year's. Driving out there, and my wheels got spinning because I grew up in Sarasota. I grew up a fisherman, but I had been to Cabo. The first blue marlin I had ever caught was in Cabo San Lucas, and I was familiar with the Cabo tournaments. And so wheels got spinning, went on vacation, didn't think about it. The entire 9.5-hour ride back, thoughts are percolating. So turn of the calendar year, January 2nd, I tell myself, I'm going to put 90 days on the calendar to do discovery. I was working on 2 other ventures at the time that were really high profile. They didn't take off, so I won't mention them here, but they were big international sports superstars, working with them on kind of a white labeled product business for them. And so I'm working on those 2 projects, and I'm looking at fishing, and I say, I'm going to put 90 days on the calendar, and I'm going to do discovery on fishing. And for me at the time, I didn't really know what the problem even was, what the opportunity was. I was just asking questions, so I started picking up the phone and I started calling, tournament owners, major tournament owners. And basically the question I was asking was, why isn't there a PGA Tour of fishing? All the data that I look at, all of the KPIs that you would look at if you were, just say you were an investor looking at investing in a sports league or creating a sports league. The KPIs, the data for fishing, jumps off the page. Participation numbers, about 56.8 million Americans last year bought a fishing license. 26.8 million played a round of golf. About 33 million if you include putt-putt and going to Topgolf. They just started tracking that. The USGA just started like 2 years ago. So we know that all people that swing a golf club, either out on a course or in a putt-putt or in Topgolf, is about 33 million. Twice as many Americans are intentionally going and buying a fishing license. So like those consumers, we know, first of all, we know about 15% more. So it's about 70 million Americans are fishing every year. So then you start to look at like, I always say, like, if I start a lacrosse league or a rugby league or something like that, one of the challenges that you have as an emerging sport, I'm going to come back to that because I said that intentionally. An emerging sport, you have to try to figure out how to grow participation, right? And part of that is, how do you get your gear into big box? How do you get your gear into Walmart? Well, 100% of Walmart supercenters have a fishing and tackle aisle. Mm-hmm. It's already the largest recreational sport in the country. So early, just going to say lacrosse league as an example, when they're sitting down raising money, Series A, Series B, stuff like that, a lot of their conversation is guided towards growing participation in the sport. So we didn't have that issue with fishing. So then going back to the question, well, why hasn't fishing reached that PGA Tour caliber if all the economics are there? $26 billion a year in recreational golf gear sales, $24.8 billion in fishing. Fishing is the only sport that you can talk about in terms of GDP. Fishing is 1.9 to 2.1% of the U.S. GDP, and it's about 1% of the global GDP, which is measured in the trillions.
Really?
So other sports can't say that. You can't say, hey, we're going to build a league and a wheel and spoke content model around professionalizing the largest recreational sport, in North America. So, and I always try to be careful because I want to be respectful to the freshwater fishing leagues that exist. At the same time, our hypothesis was, we have a case study on bass fishing. We have decades of it. Mm-hmm. And so trying to understand why bass fishing, and it's a complex answer, and we won't be able to, solve it on this call today, but like, how come professional fishing hasn't been able to like penetrate what seems to be a glass ceiling, right? And our hypothesis was, I hate to say this, but bass fishing isn't the solution. Not today. It can be a component of the solution.
As somebody who likes bass fishing, and actually I have a pond in front of me right now, and I do like bass fishing, but to me, and this is, I don't want the listeners to think this is a reflection of Mark's opinion. This is just me making a statement, probably stupidly. As an outsider, it feels like bass fishing, especially at the pro level, is like NASCAR. It's kind of regional. Is like a lot of heavy kind of logo sponsorship on, dye sub shirt uniforms, that kind of thing. What you guys are building feels more like Formula One. Like it's a much higher level.
I love that you say that, because that's what we say. We say there can be a NASCAR and there can be a Formula One. And for us, pop culture relevancy is extremely important in today's, media cycle and, media strategy. And also, I mean, if you just go to the core product, and this is one of the things that SFC struggles with all the time. When we speak with network executives, when we speak with people, what they think professional fishing is not our sport.
Right.
And so because we have such a long case study on professional fishing and freshwater, the easiest solution for someone that's making a decision at times is to encapsulate it and put it in a bucket. And so they say, okay, well, we want a highlight show. We want a 1 hour highlight show of your sport. We don't do highlight shows. Not to say we won't, but we're live, and we're live from the middle of the ocean. And we have the ability to do that, not just from technology, which is a big part of the story. It's a big part of how we were able to do it.
Well, we're going to get into that. So I definitely want to dive deeper on the technology side, but
also the content. We're a team sport. If you understand, the intricacies of professional offshore fishing, I'll be the first to admit 5-6 years ago, I didn't know. Now I do. Now I'm an expert. But when you watch the game being played, if you understand the game, it's like watching football. There's a lot of decisions that are being made in real time. And then the other part about bill fishing compared to bass fishing, a bass is going to fight on TV for somewhere between 15 and 25 seconds. A billfish is going to fight anywhere from like our average is like 11 minutes, but just call it 11 minutes to 4 hours. And so we have the ability with this sport to be able to do more of like a red zone style presentation of fishing, because you can have anglers hooked up. And again, if you know the sport and you're watching it, we have the best anglers in the world. We have the best captains, best mates, best anglers, period. It would take a lot to convince me otherwise. But if you watch it and you know the sport, you understand like what's going on at a deeper level, and that the break off chances and stuff like that, based on the type of tackle or even who's behind the rod or reel, there's a lot that goes into it. And so anyway, we feel like the league, has kind of like we check all of the boxes in order to be able to show that.
And I want to get into explaining this a little bit to the audience. So, and I think from my outsider's perspective, it sort of feels like, I'm not discounting the pro bass fishing thing. I think it's incredible what those guys do. But even watching those tournaments in person or on TV, it's pretty easy for, I think, the normal consumer to watch that and say there's a pretty like close tie between that and what like grandpa did at the lake in his boat, right? With going bass fishing. What you guys are doing, the stakes are very high. The gear is crazy expensive and high tech, and the boats are huge. And it's significant. Like it's
aspirational.
So explain. So I guess to back up for a step. So you're driving to Colorado. You have this idea. You're probably steel manning this whole concept in your head the whole drive. At what point do you say, okay, I'm going to do this? And then how the heck do you start with something like that? Because the point of entry is so high. Give everyone I guess before we get into the how, please explain, like, to the person who has never seen one of your tournaments and doesn't understand what we're talking about, explain the boat, explain the crew, explain what we're talking about. Because this is not like throwing a line at the end of a dock, right?
Yeah, I'm super transparent with this to anybody that, even knows me at SFC, So I put 90 days on the calendar and I say, look, I tell this to myself, if I get to April 2nd and there's not a clear path forward, got to drop the project. Because at the time I was running an agency of one, and, your most valuable resource is time.
Yeah.
And so if I get there, doesn't matter if I like it, if I don't see it, if I don't have a business plan put together, then you got to drop the project. I got to like February 20th and heard from 10 different people, this is something that should have been done 10 years ago. So then you start to get into the why. Why hasn't anybody done it? Like, why doesn't this exist? That was always the question in my mind. Why doesn't this exist? And, go back, and I might be mixing up the dates a little bit here, but so I go out, I'm walking the dog, and there's a gentleman by the name of Elon Musk that is on a podcast, and he's talking about this LEO satellite project. And at the time, he wasn't saying Starlink. He was talking about SpaceX and gridding the world to have high-speed internet. And he made a reference. He said, you'll be able to have high-speed internet in the middle of the desert. And so I'm walking the dog, and it's one of those like right place, right time, right person, right idea.
Yep.
I had a background in remote broadcasting from college football playoffs, Super Bowl, Final Four, festivals, like stuff that we had done in our parking lots. Like I knew what the dedicated megabytes per second we needed for upload speed were. That was about all I knew to sound technical, So I reached out to SpaceX. Now keep in mind, Elon Musk companies don't have customer service.
No, right.
They don't run ads.
Right.
So I was fortunate to find one person who I later found out was sitting in a hangar in Brownsville, Texas. And I reached out to him on LinkedIn, and for some reason he took my call. And to this day, I don't know why, but he put me under NDA with SpaceX, and I was on calls with engineers, and it took us a couple calls because even the first call, the engineers that were on, they didn't know, they didn't have the answer.
So this is before Starlink is even consumer facing or anything. This is
Starlink, like I believe, became consumer facing in November of that year.
Wow.
Or later that year.
So they're probably looking at you as some sort of a use case test, right? Like if we can make this work on a boat in the ocean.
Yeah, I was on a call with him, And he just said, Mark, I go, why are you doing this? He goes, I just think this is cool shit.
Yeah.
We're gonna do it.
Okay.
And then I'm like, great, will you sponsor it? He's like, we're not going to fucking sponsor you. Oh, sorry, Dan, if I got to bleep that out.
Oh, we're good. So
in the back.
So I'm kind of shocked. So your first step wasn't call a boat manufacturer. It wasn't call a possible sponsor, but it makes sense, I guess. It was, how are we going to broadcast this thing? Because you were a comms
I think
guy.
with sports are live, if we tried to create what everybody else had already created, man, we wouldn't be here today. And bass fishing has been live for a long time. Why? Well, because you can transmit from a lake back to a truck and up and out, but try broadcasting from 450 miles offshore in the middle of the ocean. The only thing you see is the curvature of the earth. And so I got into it with SpaceX and learned, about the LEO grid and where they were in the project. And that was March of 2021. And as soon as I had that information, it was go time. Excuse me. There was a point that I was speaking with SpaceX, and they said they confirmed that the technology that we needed to broadcast the sport live was coming, but they didn't know when. And so if anybody's been a long time Starlink subscriber, you'll remember that they were gridding the planet, right? Mm-hmm. They were gridding the earth, and you could buy it in certain pockets and get subscriptions if they had you gridded. What also happened in 2021 or 2022, the Ukraine war broke out. So they shifted resources over to Eastern Europe to turn internet on over there. And it kind of delayed the project going into 2020 for good reason, but like what we were anticipating, we were going to have internet, in the middle of the ocean in 2022 didn't exist. We will write a book one day of SFC in 2022, because we were literally retrieving camera cards from the middle of the ocean. Here was our technology in 2022. We would take a white trash bag, we would fill it with air. We would tape a camera card that's the size of your thumbnail to the inside of the bag, tie that bag, and throw it in the ocean, and we would mark it with a Garmin GPS. And we would have a boat drive around. And keep in mind, some of these boats are 60 miles apart. In the middle of the night, we were retrieving camera cards from the middle of the ocean, in whatever condition the ocean was that night, picking up these camera cards and running them back to the closest port, uploading them in the middle of the night or early in the morning so we could have a show the next day on CBS Sports Network. The next year, the internet turned on.
Crazy. Okay.
So yeah, I mean, there was, that's
like drug runner stuff right there. That's
really
wild.
It was, man. Not as all this Venezuela stuff. I mean, we could have been blown up 5 years ago. But that's what we did. I mean, we didn't, for us, it was, we're going to be live. We were 1 day a week at that point. So I think we were.
So was it a time buy with the state?
Yeah, we had a really great deal worked out with CBS Sports Network, and they were just real big, proponents of getting this up off the ground in the beginning, and still have great relationships with the guys over at CBS Sports
Explain
Network.
To the listeners who have not seen FFC, and I'm hopeful that everyone who listens to this will afterwards, because it's great content. What's a team look like today? What kind of gear are they using? How many people? What are they fishing for? Give us the elevator pitch.
Yeah, and I'll answer that question even with the lead in that you had about the boats and the tackle, right? So your captain is your quarterback. They're the superstar. They're the ones that have the pressure to make the decisions, and then ultimately how they maneuver the boat is going to really dictate and determine how quickly they're going to be able to get whatever fish they have hooked up, how quickly they're going to be able to get it to the back of the boat. I say that I'm painting with broad strokes, but that's where it's a team game. Your mate, your angler that's down in the cockpit, they really need to be, it's almost like, like basketball. Like you got to be almost like running plays, and you have to work together, very frequently to be able to just build that cadence, because someone that's hooked up to a 500-pound blue marlin that's jumping all around and they're reeling hard, they need to know, and they're on communication, they're on headset with the captain, but sometimes the captain's going forward, sometimes he's speeding up to try to cut down drag, or sometimes you're tight, the fish is kind of wearing down, and then you're going to back down hard and try to get all that line in and get the fish to the boat. But you're dealing with the apex predator of the ocean that is in its environment. It's a very powerful fish. And it can break off at any time, or it can behave, one way, anytime.
And the primary target is marlin, right? So,
yeah, Yeah, we're blue marlin, white marlin, sailfish are the primary species. Occasionally, you'll see us catch a spearfish, which is it's a it's its own type of species, but they kind of behave like a white marlin. But yeah, all types of marlin. Then when we get to Cabo, we score for black marlin and striped marlin.
And what are the boats? What are those
Yeah, so
typically?
your boats, they're going to be anywhere between a 57-foot and a 92-foot sport fishing yacht. You can compete. We don't mandate that you're in a sporty. It's just the center consoles. There are big center consoles. What's going on right now in the marketplaces? The center consoles keep getting bigger and bigger and more luxurious.
90 foot is a huge boat. That's a
Yeah,
that's a big boat.
pretty luxurious.
What is the advantage of the boats that big? Obviously, they're not going to be as maneuverable. There's do
There's
better
a
in big
lot
water.
there's a lot of strategy. A 90-foot boat compared to a 57-foot boat, you're going to move quicker. And also the manufacturer. The lines in the boat, you have certain boats that are going to get you out to the fishing grounds and maneuver a little bit different than a 92-foot boat. The advantage of a 92-foot boat, that boat fishes in our Gulf division, you're staying out overnight. So your crew has better accommodations and there's more space to do things. But I think if you ask like most competitive captains, they want to be somewhere between like 57 and 72. But I mean,
Ballpark, what's a boat like that cost if someone was to go get a relatively new one?
Brand new, depending if it's custom or not. I mean, it's going to be somewhere between 14 and $22 million.
So that's the F1 part. Okay, so this is high dollar stuff. And
Yeah,
how many?
our boats on average. Well, I can't say on average. I think the range of boats last year was like probably 3 million to 23 million.
Wow.
Yeah, and then you got about $250,000 worth of tackle.
Wow.
Your sonars nowadays are in the hundreds of thousands. The technology keeps getting better too. Forward-facing sonar, so you're talking, probably $400,000 with the device and the install. Our boats take about $17,000 worth of diesel to fill up the gas tank.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean they're running hundreds of miles.
I mean, how big is a crew on an average boat? Like how many guys go out or people go out on an average?
Yeah, so your team is going to be a captain, and then the makeup of how many mates and anglers is really determined by the team. But your typical is going to be a captain, 2 or 3 mates, and an angler. You might have more people on the boat, you might have more mates, you might have more anglers to rotate, but your typical is going to be about 5.
And how did you recruit the teams and the owners? How did that process work?
Oh, Dan, that'll be in the book also. Just
okay.
I wish I could go back and some of these calls were like monitored, because man,
because you have some high profile owners. Some of your owners are celebrities in themselves.
We do, yeah. We do well in that category. Going back to the original, honestly, man, we were just picking up and dialing people. We would look at the standings of who was winning tournaments, and we would call them and say, "Hey, we got this big, ambitious sports league that we're starting called SFC, and we want you to fish the circuit." So the first 3 years, we were like a FedEx Cup model. You would have to fish a certain number of events and qualify, and depending on how many the boats that qualified, whoever had the most points would win the championship. Last year we shifted to a team and league model, like a more professional model. We always knew that was coming, we just didn't know when we were going to deploy it. And so we did that last year, and then to emphasize on the team owners, Scotty Scheffler won our league last year. Scotty owns the Texas Lone Stars Angling Club. His agent Blake and Justin LaMonica, Blake's the president, Justin's the VP and GM. He's got a great team. Freebird, Spencer Johnson, he's captain. He won it all. Other team owners in the league: Brian Kelly from Florida Georgia Line. Brian's 14-time Academy of Country Music Award winner. Taylor Gooch in Live Golf. Taylor just was named captain of Smash Golf Club. Harold Varner III, he's one of the owners of the 4 Aces in Live Golf. Raheem Mostert, who led the NFL in touchdowns in 2023. Randy Moss, Austin Dillon, number 3 car, NASCAR.
Yeah, NASCAR.
Phil's Racing, Daytona 500 winner. He owns our South Carolina team. So, at this point, and then we have the other people that own the league, the other teams, family offices or sports private equity people that are, coming in and see this as a long-term or medium-term opportunity.
Investment.
build a
An
league.
investment that's also pretty fun and awesome. So
Yeah.
okay.
Well, and it's also, there's crossover too. I mean, you're getting media out of it. You control your sponsorships. You can do hosting. Like there's a lot that, the team owners can do. Oh, Ben Simmons. I didn't even know. Sorry. Ben Simmons. We just announced on, December 23rd that Ben bought our South Florida sales team.
Yeah. NBA. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Number one pick in the NBA draft. Yeah.
How, as you made this, so you get SFC up and running, Starlink comes online, you're pushing live content out on TV. You've got this kind of all-star lineup of team owners and principals. It feels like owners often think long-term, and coaches and players are often focused on sort of more immediate performance. And I know, having been exposed to some pretty high-level professional sports organizations before SFC, how did that difference sort of shape your decision-making with the organization? How much was this about like this season, this content, this broadcast versus, hey, I'm building something long-term?
Yeah. I mean, my thing very early on was that we need to build the PGA Tour of fishing, and the PGA Tour is a 100-year league. So we need to be building a 100-year league. We need to be thinking about how we can build a sustainable product that has a really, strong business behind it. And ultimately is something, I'm a capitalist and an entrepreneur. I'm a red-blooded American. We want to create jobs. We want to lift the community. The captains, the mates, the people that work on these boats are, they're superstars, and we've got to do our part to elevate them, across, sports media and, just entertainment culture. So we've got incredible people. Our captains today, I speak very candidly with them. They're the pioneers. If you go back and look at the salaries of NBA players, I mean, look at Larry Bird and, Magic Johnson back in the 80s, and look at what, the guys are making today.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell them that, we're all, there's very much in SFC, like we're in this together mentality. And, I tell them, you guys are the pioneers. I'm the entrepreneur, but my goal and my vision, and I can't do all the work, but I will tell them, I want to build legacy programs to make sure that the pioneers are taken care of. And really just continue to elevate, their value in the marketplace, help them become personalities and, be able to find sponsors and those things. So
are the captains often the owners, or are the anglers the owners, or is it sort of a mix?
It's a little bit of a mix. Yeah. I mean, we've got a couple teams that are owner operated. The schedule's pretty grueling. We have two divisions. We have an Atlantic division and a Gulf division. Your Atlantic division teams are fishing 6 tournaments from Key West this year all the way up to Cape Cod. And that's over about a 100-day stretch on the same boat. The Gulf teams are fishing all 5 Gulf bordering states in 6 tournaments. Same thing across.
Stupid question, but how do they get the boats from tournament? Are they taking them on the ocean? Yeah, just okay.
Yeah, they drive them. Yeah. So we have some plans in the future. We will be a 3-division league at some point. We know when. Not sure we can announce it today, but we'll be a 3-division league. We'll have a 3rd division coming in here very shortly, relatively shortly. And then, so, I mean, to be an owner operator, I mean, they're few and far between, just because, a lot of the people that own the teams are still, involved with the business that they've built, or, they do other things. And so they hire a full-time crew to operate the team.
How did you get how do the teams, you're dealing with a pretty wide, I mean, it sounds like you've got several team principals that are involved in entertainment. So hopefully that helps. But do the teams recognize the importance of the media component, especially live media, social media, content, personality? Obviously we've got
100%.
NBA players and NASCAR drivers and country music stars.
I mean, if you look at, the value of having professional golfers, both PGA and Live, musicians, NFL, NASCAR, NBA, those people, super high profile people too. I mean, they've been around the business of sports and sports media sponsorship, for a long time. And they're also, kind of experts in their own individual leagues. And some of them have made investments in other leagues outside of SFC, things like Pro Bowl riding. So, we work with people that really understand, how to grow a league. Somebody asked me before, like, well, why would, Scotty Scheffler and Taylor Gooch buy a team? And I always tell them, they know what pays their paycheck. They know what the PGA Tour and Live Golf, what props up a league. It's going to be gear sales. It's going to be travel and hospitality, ticketing, all of those things. And those components exist in fishing. In fact, on paper, it's bigger, depending on which data point you're looking at, but they're relatively equal. So, we bring people like that in, and, their expertise is invaluable to us. And then, the other thing, is you just got to build great teams. I mean, I think that's the secret sauce with SFC. We just bring in, I'm smart enough to know that you got to bring in people that are wiser than you. Right. And so we bring in expertise, whether it be from, our legal teams, or our agencies, or whoever we're working with. I mean, we bring in, really the top people, and we're very fortunate, to have people like that work with us every day to continue to advance the league.
Very cool. As we kind of wind this up, Mark, and I want to be respectful of your time. I mean, you're building something. I mean, clearly, you're not afraid of hard things, and you're building something that's not just like a new entry, but kind of a new category, which is impressive. As you look back on your whole career, and in particular on the SFC kind of journey and where you are today, what was the biggest mistake you made, and what did you learn from it?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. Look, as an entrepreneur, you have to be prepared to fail, and you don't know what it is. I mean, I fail all the time, all the time. I failed with SFC, like certain initiatives or projects or things like that. Like, for me, like, I've never been afraid of failing. I have people that I'm around me, and like people that have known me since before SFC, and I've been, 15-year plus friends with. And, one of those people told me very early on with SFC, he said, you know what I really admire about you, Mark, is that you're not afraid to fail, and I think that if I'm saying all this because hopefully there's a listener out there that has an idea and, has the know-how, and they've thought for a business and they want to go out and pursue that business. And if I could speak to that person, I would say, you cannot be afraid to fail. And I think that, Dan, like our generation, we're like kind of like the first generation of like the LinkedIn generation, right? Mm-hmm. If you, 20 years ago were let go from a job or you had an employment gap, it wasn't public. And I think that there's so many people that are so afraid to pursue what they have a vision for because they're so afraid of like what other people are going to think about them or what their LinkedIn is going to look like, and you're not going to have all the answers. Mark Cuban, says that if you wait to be perfect before you launch, you're never going to launch. So, that's the thing with me is that, back in 2021 or late 2020, early 2021, like I saw something. I wasn't afraid to fail. I mean, you got to understand, Mark Neifeld from Dallas, Texas was picking up the phone, calling the biggest bill fishing tournaments in the country and telling them, hey, we're going to start a big live bill fishing league with prize money underwritten by sponsors, and we're going to go put it on network television. And people were like, what are you talking? Like, no, there's no way that could possibly happen. And, here we are today, and we have big non-endemic category sponsors, and we're with the largest media company in the world, ESPN and Disney, and we've got an incredible roster of team owners. And, I think just a part of that, I mean, look, there are many stops along this journey where could have failed hard, fell flat on my face. Trust me when I tell you, being a guy from Dallas, Texas, the former Dallas Cowboy guy who goes and starts a professional offshore fishing league, like there were many times early on where like the SFC probably could have just gone under and not exist. So, I'll answer that question by saying like, I fail all the time. I'm not sure I can give you I can give you fun stories like, how we painted the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl field incorrectly and didn't realize it until the teams took the field. And those are big public failures. Fortunately, only Brent Musburger noticed, and he did say something during a broadcast. But But there are things like that. The Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl people are hopefully they're not listening to this because they're like, oh, I can't believe you brought that up. It still stings, 15 years later. But you have to be willing to put yourself out there. I fail all the time. I fail. We might have an initiative that we want with SFC that stands up, and 6 months later it's not working. So that would be my answer to that question. Hopefully I didn't dodge the question, but
no, you didn't. I think that's a great answer, and it's well thought out. I've really enjoyed this. I've learned a lot. I have more questions, but I want to be respectful of your time. Mark, where do people learn more about the Sport Fishing Championship, about you? How do they watch? Give us all the details.
Yeah, so www.sportfishingchampionship.com. All of our handles are at Sport Fishing Championship or the official SFC. They're all on our website. Hop on our site. Free agency is happening right now. Got a lot of teams trading boats or teams hiring new captains and teams heading into the 26th season. We are on ESPN, Disney Plus, and Hulu. And so our schedule for 2026 will be revealed here this month. And so we'll have all the broadcast times and stuff like that. But that's where to find us. We will actually do some live YouTube broadcasting this year for the first time. And then I'm in this incredible, beautiful facility that we've moved into. And the amount of content we'll be churning out here in 26 is going to be pretty incredible. And so, yeah, that's where to find us.
Yeah. And for those who are watching, not listening, the background you're seeing behind Mark, we discussed this before we got on the call. That's real. That's
real.
That's a studio. That's not like a Zoom background. So it's pretty cool.
We got good people here in Dallas. Yep. Here at TBN.
Very cool. Well, can't wait to learn more, and maybe we can have you on a second time after the season and hear how it went and talk some more. So
let's do that. You know what? But I'll toss this one out here. Okay, let's do it at a remote location. Okay, come down to Walker's Key, Bahamas, or Key West, and we'll film the follow up to this. Sitting dockside by a boat.
Yeah, you're gonna really have to twist my arm on that one. That sounds terrible. I love it, Mark. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it. I think the audience will get a lot out of this. Thank you for coming on Only Strong Survive. To everyone listening, thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who loves great stories. I'm Dan Kahn. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.